Well, I've been musing about God rocks, turning my word to you yesterday over in my mind, and here, as they say, is the rest of the story, or at least a bit more of it. God does indeed rock. He is truly a superstar. In fact, he is the superstar. Extraordinary in every conceivable way. And it's good for a soul, any soul, to spend time every day reflecting on him. Or, as the Apostle Paul put it, contemplating the Lord of glory. But a word of caution is called for. You see, when you urge people to think often about God, as I urged you to do yesterday, when you urge them to keep the beauties and the wonders of the Lord at the fore of their minds, to live every day in the grip of his awesomeness, it is, I think, important to point out that there is a difference, a very significant difference between contemplating God and going all freestyle and imagining or reimagining God. I say this because there has long been among people a peculiar sense of liberty where God is concerned, especially with regard to his nature, character, will, or his disposition. A strange and irrational notion that the Lord is somehow fully customizable, that he can be made into whatever we wish him to be, that we can, with complete impunity, re-engineer God to taste or to suit us, and that doing so is, in fact, every person's right. But here's the thing. God is as he is, as he's revealed himself to be in the Bible, not as we want him to be. Now, some people may not like to hear that. They may interpret it as heavy-handed or take it as an imposition or an infringement on their personal intellectual liberty. But let me point something out. Most of us would become quite indignant were we to hear that someone who doesn't know us well was going about making inaccurate observations or false statements about us, saying, you know, John, he's like this. Or, you know, Jane, she's like that. We are, after all, as we are. Not as someone other than us imagines, deems, or says that we are. In a situation like that, our thoughts would likely be, how dare that person take such liberties? How dare they behave so presumptuously? Who do they think they are? And yet, many people who would be incensed if someone attempted to arbitrarily impose an identity on them that wasn't theirs, do that very thing to God. They treat him as if he were some malleable lump of clay, some soft plasticine figure that they can shape into anything they wish. While they would resent and think it ridiculous if someone were to think the same of them or behave the same toward them. This pattern of taking liberties with the nature and character of God goes a long, long, long way back in human history. In Romans chapter 1, Paul paints a verbal picture of the early history of the human race, and he sketches the spiritual devolution of our kind. You see, human history is not the story of benighted souls that worshipped idols and then grew into people that worshipped the one true God. The story of humankind is the exact opposite. We humans started out knowing God, who he was, as he was. But our ancient forefathers willfully, and I deliberately emphasize the word willfully, they willfully turned from the truth and rejected God as he was for a manufactured, trumped-up, bogus, specious deity or deities that suited them better. Romans 1:18-26 reads like this. But God shows his anger from heaven against all sinful, wicked people who suppress the truth in their wickedness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. Forever, since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they haven't even a rag of an excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious, ever-living God, they worshiped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So God abandoned them to do whatever shameful thing their hearts desired. As a result, they became the playthings of their own foul desires, dishonoring their bodies. They deliberately forfeited the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and they served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. Amen. That is why God abandoned them to their shameful desires. You see, those people so long ago, they knew the truth about God. But God, as he was, he cramped their style. So in their pursuit of evil, in their self-centric determination to have what they wanted, they held down the truth like an attempt to drown it. They suppressed the correct understanding of the Lord in order to live their lives as they wished without being convicted by his true nature. They customized God to suit their taste, and in the process thought up all manner of foolish, ridiculous ideas about him, about deity. And I have to say, there are a lot of foolish and inaccurate ideas about God filling up the minds of people today. Inaccurate and foolish, not because I deem them so, but because the Word does. Inaccurate and foolish in that they don't conform to God's revelation or disclosure of himself in his inspired Word, in the Bible. Those people then, they deliberately forfeited the truth about God for a lie. In so doing, they thought themselves quite clever. We're the same. But they, in fact, became muttonheads, buffoons, fools, utter fools, Paul says. Sad to say, we're the same. Having presumptuously decided to re-engineer God to suit themselves, those early humans descended. They sank. First of all, they sank into idolatry, the essence of which is to assume that God is other than he is. Wrong ideas about God are the virtual fountain from which the polluted river of idolatry flows. Second, they sank into thinking and living like beasts. You see, an inaccurate view of God is always a low view of God, and a low view of God inescapably gives rise to thousands of lesser evils. A.W. Tozer wrote this. He said, "It is impossible to keep our moral practices sound and our inward attitudes right once our idea of God is erroneous or inadequate." So let me sum up. Reflect on God often. Take time to think about him every day. Contemplate his many beauties. Revel in his awesomeness. He's a rock. God's a rock. He rocks. But contemplate him as he is, as he's revealed himself to be in the Bible. Not as you or someone else might imagine him to be or wish him to be. If you reject that admonition, if you instead entertain custom notions about God, you need to know that that road leads to idolatry. If you're human, you're designed to worship. So you are inevitably going to erect another God in your life in place of the true God, even if it's yourself. But I promise you, your new deity, your false God, will most certainly and woefully fail you. The other thing is that road, if you begin re-engineering God, it also leads to moral turpitude and to the death of civility. It has done so many times throughout history, and it is doing so now. I leave you with these final words, a paraphrase of something that Tozer also wrote. What comes into your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you. So get it right. Get it biblical. Don't get it my way. Don't get it, the way that your tradition suggests it should be or he should be. Go to the Word. Find God there. Don't try to take an idea and superimpose it over the Word. Go to the Word with an open mind and find God there in His book. And then you'll see God rocks. God bless you.